Hello, spooky friends, and welcome to our very first episode of Pastatime.
Woo!
And it's not an episode about where we make pasta, but that would be cool. This is our new thing that we're going to be doing, I guess switching off with story time. So we're going to be switching off. One week will be story times, which are your folks' actual paranormal experiences, true crime experiences, things like that. And then we're going to do this episode, Pasta Time. Pasta Time's where sometimes it'll be maybe stories that we've written or stories you've written and have sent to us that we can share with everyone. Or just creepypastas that we grab off the internet that we share with all of you. So welcome to the very first episode of Pasta Time. I love the title, Pasta Time. But yeah, so Adam, why don't you get into things?
I mean, I will also talk about Pasta Time. Pretty excited. Like Robin mentioned, we are going to be doing this bi-weekly thing where we're going to be going over creepypastas. We're going to be reading them and then discussing them a little bit afterwards. We talked about doing this like way back when you did the Dilatov or Dyatlov Pass incident. No. It was something else.
No, it was the Russian sleep experiment.
I get those two mixed up.
And we've done other episodes, so like the Black-Eyed Children or I did the Staircase in the Woods type thing, but this is us just reading some topics.
Yeah, so a lot of these, I mean, there's so many of these creepypastas, and they're not very long. You know, some of them are incredibly long, some of them are not, but they're kind of fun. So we decided that we've been talking about just doing some bonus content for patrons for a while. We're still definitely going to be doing that, and when we kept talking about this idea, we're like, do we want to put a paywall behind something like Pasta Time? And we're like, no, we kind of don't. We want to just kind of fucking do it and have fun with it. So we're going to be doing this going forward every other week. And, still send in your stories, your personal stories, and please make sure that those stories are true, because I think what we're going to be doing going forward is we're going to have an additional email address to be announced very soon for you folks to send in your personal creepypastas. That's something that Robin and I had also talked about. So if you have we've had people send in short stories before and been like, this is fiction, so I'm not sure if you want this. And I'm going to be making some updates to the website as well. So, hopefully you can have a spot to go to like some Pasta Time spots and maybe just say like, hey, I love this creepypasta. Maybe you should, read it on the show. So
cool
stuff like that. We're legitimately brainstorming it as we go. But we're really excited to be adding new stuff into the show. So, did you want to go first, or were you saying you wanted me to go first?
I think you'll go first because I asked you what yours was, and then we started the show. So you go first.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to be going first. So I will be reading the first Pasta Time creepypasta ever. And oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Like Robin mentioned, actually I don't think she mentioned this on here. But my first one is a little bit shorter, and I'm really excited to read it. It's called I Sat on the Bus. Not sure if anyone out there has heard this one
Sounds
before.
Hot.
It's, I don't know how in the fuck that sounds hot to you, but apparently sitting on a school bus sounds hot. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. I sat on the bus on my way to school.
Sounds hot.
I hate you so much, dude. Listening to music and paying little to no attention to the other students. At one of the stops, my mind snapped back to reality.
Well, there goes gravity.
I knew, and this is the nice thing. This is the nice thing about doing creepypastas. We can pre-read these. This is the first time where we can read beforehand what we're going to put on the show. And when I read that, I was like, I guarantee you Robin interrupts me. Like 100%. 100. I looked toward the small house. Tommy's house, I thought. A hand slipped through the drapes of the window and waved the bus driver to move on. He's sick, I thought, paying no large amount of attention to the situation. The day flew by. I watched the local news channel after school, and what I heard paralyzed me. Tommy's entire family was murdered that day by an unknown suspect.
Okay. So it's like Tommy murdered his whole family.
No.
Oh, okay.
I mean, if that's how you want to take it, sure. But what the whole point of this is, at this point, what I thought was like, okay, well, if anyone would have done anything right then and there, they might have prevented this whole family from being murdered. Oh. Because the hand that waved them on may not have been, or there could have been an assailant in the house.
Tommy's hand.
No, it just said a hand. Didn't
okay,
say
gotcha.
Tommy's hand. So making a lot of assumptions over there.
Sorry. Go on.
All right. After hearing this news, I moved back up to my room and quietly fell asleep. The next day, I sat on the bus. We drove past Tommy's house, and the bus driver, unaware of Tommy's family's fate, stopped at his home. As I was about to get up and explain to her what had happened, something caught my eye. A pale hand slipped through the drapes of the window and waved the bus to move on. I sat on the bus, terrified.
Oh my god.
Yeah. I was like, yep, that's fucking good. Putting that on the show. And that's it.
So it's like someone's still there even after murdering the entire family.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's the same hand who was there before when people didn't realize that the family had been murdered. So it's like, this is just sort of the type of creepypasta that just makes me want to write about it, you know, because there's so many questions. You're like, who the fuck was the hand? When was the hand there? What took place behind the curtains?
Well, it's like the stories where people are living in people's houses and you don't know that they're just living in your house. Like, I think maybe I've covered it before where people have had, they found these places,
squatters or whatever.
Yeah, in their house where it's like they see makeshift beds and all this stuff that's been in a hidden area of their home. And that's what this kind of makes me think about, is just someone was squatting in their house and decided to murder them all and is still living there.
It's just really, really creepy, you know? It's like maybe the family was already dead and this is like a ghost hand waving them on. It's just, you can take the story so many different ways. But I really enjoyed this one, and I had never really read creepypastas until you told me that they existed. And even then I was like, I don't know what the fuck that is, but now I do. They're fictional stories based out of horror, and they're pretty cool. So I Sat on the Bus is our first one, and that was by Isaac Cook. So good stuff, Isaac, and good start to Pastatime number 1.
Alrighty, so my first story here is the two of my stories are going to be pretty popular in the creepypasta universe, I guess. And this one is called Gateway of the Mind.
That's pretty awesome.
All right, so it goes. In 1983, a team of deeply pious scientists conducted a radical experiment in an undisclosed facility. The scientists had theorized that a human without access to any senses or ways to perceive stimuli would be able to perceive the presence of God. They believed that the 5 senses clouded our awareness of eternity, and without them, a human could actually establish contact with God by thought.
I have totally read studies and seen studies done of people putting into
where and it makes them like see angels, right?
Yeah, or they have like an experience where
of divinity.
They
like
realized
that.
a way that they could simulate like brain activity when people would think that they had some sort of religious experience.
Yes.
And after they put someone through like this different like form of like sensory, it's not even sensory deprivation, it's like a weird sensory overload that they would put them through. They would be like, I seriously felt like God was in the room with me.
Yeah.
And it happened all the time. So this is kind of based in reality, and I'm already a little creeped out.
An elderly man who claimed to have, quote-unquote, nothing left to live for was the only test subject to volunteer. To purge him of all his senses, the scientists perform a complex operation in which every sensory nerve connection to the brain was surgically severed. That's fucking nuts.
That sounds awful.
Although the test subject retained full muscular function, he could not see, hear, taste, smell, or feel. With no possible way to communicate with or even sense the outside world, he was alone with his thoughts. Scientists monitored him as he spoke aloud about his state of mind in jumbled, slurred sentences that he couldn't even hear. After 4 days, the man claimed to be hearing hushed, unintelligible voices in his head. Assuming it was an onset of psychosis, the scientists paid little attention to the man's concerns. 2 days later, the man cried that he could hear his dead wife speaking with him, and even more, he could communicate back. The scientists were intrigued, but were not convinced until the subject started naming dead relatives of the scientists.
Wow.
He repeated personal information to the scientists that only their dead spouses and parents would have known. At this point, a sizable portion of scientists left the study. I would too. Fuck that. After a week of conversing with the deceased through his thoughts, the subject became distressed, saying the voices were overwhelming. In every waking moment, his consciousness was bombarded by hundreds of voices that refused to leave him alone. He frequently threw himself against the wall, trying to elicit a pain response. He begged the scientists for sedatives so he could escape the voices by sleeping. This tactic worked for 3 days until he started having severe night terrors. The subject repeatedly said that he could see and hear the deceased in his dreams. Only a day later, the subject began to scream and claw at his non-functional eyes, hoping to sense something in the physical world. The hysterical subject now said the voices of the dead were deafening and hostile, speaking of hell and the end of the world. At one point, he yelled, quote-unquote, "No heaven, no forgiveness." for 5 hours straight. He continually begged to be killed, but the scientists were convinced that he was close to establishing contact with God. After another day, the subject could no longer form coherent sentences. Seemingly mad, he started to bite off chunks of flesh from his arm.
Gross.
He has no nerves, right? He can't feel it, so he's just fucking doing it.
It's still gross as fuck. Dog.
Well, and plus, you can't even. I'm sure he can't tell how hard he's biting either because you can't feel it.
Not real. It's gross.
I know. It's just anyway. The scientists rushed into the test chamber and restrained him to a table so he could not kill himself. After a few hours of being tied down, the subject halted his struggling and screaming. He stared blankly at the ceiling as teardrops silently streaked across his face. For 2 weeks, the subject had to be manually rehydrated due to the constant crying. Eventually, he turned his head and, despite his blindness, made focused eye contact with a scientist for the first time in the study. He whispered, quote, "I have spoken with God, and he has abandoned us," end quote, and his vital signs stopped. There was no apparent cause of death.
And that's the end?
Yeah.
Wow. I feel like so many times in creepypasta, people really work through some shit like people always tend to do in fiction. That one's really intense. It reminded me of a few different things as they were going through it. Like, it definitely gave me some Event Horizon feels when he's like clawing at his eyes and things like that.
Yeah.
It also just made me wonder, like, if you're really trying to reach God, and this is the way you're going to think to do it, why wouldn't you think that God has better shit to do? You know what I mean? Like, of the one creature that he has created, that, like, you're going to basically disconnect completely from the world by, you know, removing all their senses, which definitely, like, has, like, the feel of ascension, but it's, like, the cheapest version of ascension rather than achieving it through, like, meditation or enlightenment.
Yeah.
You're like, let's just cut off all your fucking nerves. That way you're completely detached from the world. And then, you know, God just shows up. He's like, yeah, I don't like you guys anymore. That's just a theme that I've seen a lot in fiction for a very long time where, like, God abandons the world or God abandons
even
heaven
in Supernatural.
It's like Supernatural. It's been like, not exactly Constantine, but in Constantine, he says God is a kid with an ant farm. He doesn't have a plan. Like, stuff like that. It's, I think people really work through the way they question their faith like that. But, like, eating hunks of your body out of your, it's just fucking gross. I specifically looked for ones that weren't that gross and they were more creepy. So I feel like you're going to give us a lot of different stuff. So we have different tastes in creepypastas. So
I like the really weird ones. Yeah, I don't know. I enjoy these weird stories, and I think people are incredibly talented to write them. I really enjoy them.
Yeah,
and
it's really well
it's
written.
Really cool. Yeah. Cool.
Why'd you pick that one in particular? I know right now we're really trying to nail down the length of the episodes.
I was going to say lengthwise, and it's like when I did the Russian sleep experiment one. I like those weird ones based in science. I think they're really creepy. It's creepier when it has some sort of reality to it,
right?
You know, so, and the fact that these are tests that have actually been done,
yeah, like we were talking about at the beginning.
It's just,
I mean, mine had some reality to it. I've been on a school bus before. I've waved at people, so
yeah.
I mean, yours is just a bit more based in reality, so yeah, good stuff. So before we move into our next story, we are going to take a really quick commercial break. And we're back. All right, so I'm going to move into my second creepypasta of the episode, and this one's name is Darkness in the Rear View Mirror. And I really liked this one when I read it because it kind of reminded me of one of the stories we had sent in before. So I'm going to go ahead and read it now. Starts out like this. I have always been uneasy driving alone at night. It was worse the first few times when I had just gotten my license, but the nagging fear has never gone away to this day. It's disorienting to look into the mirrors and see nothing, and I mean nothing but the consuming blackness of the night. It makes me hesitant to check the mirrors should I see this dark void, or worse, someone sitting in my backseat staring at me. In the summer of 2013, I found myself driving home alone on Highway 902 from a party. It was almost midnight, and needless to say, it was pitch black. As was usual at night, I was on edge. I had the radio off and could hear nothing but the muffled roar of tires on pavement and the dull hum of the engine. I stole a glance into the middle rearview mirror and saw nothing but darkness through the back window. I know that I looked backward and saw nothing. I'm sure of it. Just the seemingly endless blackness of the night. I remembered it so clearly because not 10 seconds later, a car passed me to the left, headlights on. I had one of those sudden adrenaline rushes, like when you think you see a person outside your bedroom window when it's just a tree, or when you start awake at night with the feeling of falling. 10 seconds earlier, nothing had been behind me, and now suddenly a car. I drove all the way home shivering and knowing something was off.
It's Christine.
The next morning, I found 2 sets of scratches near the back of my van. One was on the left rear, one was on the right. The car was pretty old. They could have been there for months, but this was the first time that I distinctly remembered seeing them. In hindsight, there are 2 possibilities for what happened that night. Possibility 1. By some glitch in reality or something paranormal, this other car had somehow appeared behind me within 10 seconds of me checking the mirror. Like some weird ghost crap or something. However, the second option is what makes my blood cold whenever I consider it. It didn't even occur to me until months after the fact, but it makes me dread driving alone at night even more. Possibility 2. The car was normal. It had approached me from the rear and passed me to my left. However, something large and wide and as black as the night had been clinging to the rear of my car, obscuring my view through the window and leaving deep scratches on the side. And I had inadvertently driven it home with me.
Shut up.
The end. We can say that now because these are creepypastas. So I read that one. I was like, that's really fucking creepy because we've had so many people send us stories about being followed.
Yeah.
Or about the glitch in the Matrix one where the person's driving and then all of a sudden they're in the wrong spot.
Yeah.
So when I read that, I was like, this is like remarkably similar.
Yeah, but with the scratches on the back of the car, it's more likely.
That sort of has like that whole cliche of like, they were in the back seat the whole time or the car ramming you was trying to warn you. So I just sincerely enjoyed it. So that's really the vibe I'm going for. I like the creepy stuff, not so much like the gross eating chunks out of your arm. I'm totally judging Robin's choice in creepypastas. It's going to be really fun actually criticizing our choices going forward during these episodes of Pastatime. So yeah, thank you so much. That one was radio by Video Narratives OK.
I noticed your theme though to your creepypastas is like, wait for the twist.
I mean, they all wind up having twists, I feel like. So I read like 5 today.
Phone?
I read like 5. I hate you. I read like 5 today. My favorite one was actually just way too fucking long to put into the show. It would be just me reading the thing, the entire show, and it would be a long show if I did that because it was super long. But it was based in Majora's Mask, and I was like, this is fucking awesome. So I'm just a huge Zelda nerd. Shout out to Nintendo Direct that happened today. Skyward Sword HD remake for Switch. Woo woo.
Fall Guys gonna be on Switch this summer.
Indeed. So big day for everyone. Pastatime #1 gonna go down in the history books. So good stuff. And yeah, hope you enjoyed that.
So I'm going to get into the last pasta of the episode.
The last pasta of Pastatime.
Obviously this episode of Pastatime, not period. But all right. So this one is called Lavender Town Syndrome.
Interesting.
And if you know, Lavender Town is from Pokemon.
Oh, okay.
All right. So the Lavender Town Syndrome, also known as Lavender Town Tone, or Lavender Town Suicides. I'm going to put trigger warning in here because there's a lot of stuff about that in this one. So the Lavender Town Syndrome was a peak in suicides and illness of children between the ages of 7 to 12 shortly after the release of Pokemon Red and Green in Japan back in February 27th, 1996. Rumors say that these suicides and illnesses only occurred after the children playing the game reached Lavender Town, whose theme music had extremely high frequencies. Studies showed that only children and young teens could hear since their ears are more sensitive. Due to the lavender tone, at least 200 children supposedly committed suicide, and many more developed illnesses and afflictions. The children who committed suicide usually did so by hanging or jumping from heights.
Jesus.
Those who did not acted irrationally, complained of severe headaches after listening to the Lavender Town's theme. Although Lavender Town now sounds entirely differently depending on the game, this mass hysteria was caused by the first Pokemon game released.
I will say I totally had the OG copy of Red and Blue.
I had Yellow.
Yellow wasn't OG. It was Red and Blue first, and then they did the fucking Yellow.
I loved Yellow because Pikachu followed you around. And then you go back and look at Pikachu and interact, and they would either have a smiley face or sad face or whatever. Anyway, after the Lavender Tone incident, the programmers had fixed Lavender Town's theme music to be at a lower frequency, and since then, children are no longer affected by it. One video appeared in 2010 using special software, quote-unquote special software, to analyze the audio of Lavender Town's music. When played, the software created images of the unknown near the end of the audio. This raised a controversy since the unknown didn't appear until the Generation 2 games of Silver, Gold, and Crystal. The unknown translates to leave now. And the unknown are the letters. Have you ever seen what an unknown is? It's like it's a Pokemon, but it comes in different shapes. And it comes in...
And this is real? What you're saying now is real?
Well, unknown. The unknowns are real. Those are Pokemon you can catch. And I've tried to collect all the letters, and I think there's a question mark, an exclamation point, and stuff like that. I haven't been able to catch all of them, but those are real things. So the unknown that appear spell out the letters leave now.
With an exclamation point or a question mark?
No. But those exist. Those unknowns exist. Okay. So there is also said to be a beta version of Lavender Town. It is said that the beta version of Pocket Monsters was released to some kids to test the games. This is the video of the beta version of Lavender Town, and it's a video of supposedly the OG, You
picked a creepypasta for Pastatime 1 with a video.
Yeah. But yeah, no, so that's, I think... I thought it was fun because I love Pokemon, and it's creepy because
As soon as we started getting into it and it was about Pokemon, I was like, yep, that's shocking. I mean, I totally gravitated towards the Zelda one, but I wasn't able to put it in because it was just so friggin' long. So, yeah, that's interesting. Also, Nintendo would never release beta cartridges to children. I don't think you know enough about Nintendo, author.
There is also a creepypasta called Candle Cove that you aren't allowed to read publicly because it is copyrighted.
It's because it's a TV show now.
It is a TV show now. Yes, and that TV show is terrifying. Have you seen it?
Yeah, we watched it together. Yeah, I was the person you watched it with.
Yeah, it's so scary. But 100% recommend if you haven't seen that one. It's very similar to this.
It's creepy. It's very low production value.
But it's good.
So it's good. It's all right. Who wrote yours?
They don't have names on this website. It's like the creepypasta wiki, and they don't have the author names.
Right on.
It's annoying.
All right. Well, I think that was pretty good. So hopefully we can have more video game themed creepypastas for you next time.
Well, I also did it on a topic episode. I did the what was it called?
I remember the
Omnibus
game
one, or something like that.
The game was like put in there by CIA agents.
Yeah, that one. That one's also creepypasta.
After you did that episode, Stefan reached out to me, my buddy Stefan, who's my dungeon master at this point, and he was like, "I don't know if you heard." Sounds
sexy.
You know what a dungeon master is? Shut up. But he reached out to me and was like, "I don't know if you heard about this, but there is a game that creepypasta is based off of that is said to have actually existed. That is super super similar." And he sent me a link to it. And people still debate to this day whether or not the game was real.
Wow.
Because some people were like, "No, it was 100% real. It was a real thing." So. It might wind up being an additional topic on the topic side because it might be based in truth. So, anyways, awesome. So, good stuff. All right, and that is the end of Pastatime. We're calling it Pastatime.
Yeah.
Right? Pastatime number 1.
Some fiction for your noodles.
Indeed.
Get it?
So, yes, because pasta, noodles, brain, noodles, I'm guessing. That's your pun, right? I got on the most basic level.
Don't people call your brain your noodle?
Sure. I think they do. So I'm going to go ahead and keep going with this outro. Thank you to everyone who joined us. We sincerely hope that you had a good time. We really do like reading these creepypastas, so we're really excited to be doing it. If you have a favorite creepypasta or you want to suggest one, someone also brought up while we were doing the live show, if we're going to include SCPs, we absolutely are in the future. If you want to say, hey, this is the story I would love to see you folks read, or if you want to say, hey, here's an SCP I really like, you can let us know by hitting us up on any of our social medias. You can also send us stories that have actually happened to you. You don't have to send us like pastas. You can send us actual real life stories, which we will continue to tell on Storytime. And either way, for the time being, you can go ahead and email storytime@scarish.com. I am going to come up with a different email address for the creepypastas in case you want to submit your own short story or something that you have written, keeping it appropriate and making sure we can read it on the air. Don't make anything like too gruesome or gross. Robin will probably read it on her own and be like, I loved it. No, but for real, if you guys want to send us something, we have stuff that's been submitted to us before that we just sort of read for fun. And we're like, it'd be cool if we could read this on the show, but Storytime is such a different vibe that kind of led us to creating this. So when we have that email address, I will let you folks know what it's going to be. But if you want to just message us, you can tweet us at ScarishPod. You can Insta us at ScarishPodcast on Instagram. Or you can hit us up on Facebook. Facebook? Facebook. Facebook.com/Scaryish Podcast. We would love to hear from you. Robin, for folks who would like to donate to us, how can they do so?
You can go to patreon.com/Scaryish Podcast. Those are monthly donations. Tiers start at $1. At $1, you get ad-free episodes. Who doesn't love ad-free episodes? They're great. There's also physical merch tiers, things like that. You can check it out. Check out old stuff that we've offered people. There's polls. You can take polls and help us choose topics. There's a lot of stuff. There are exclusive Storytime episodes on there, I think. Or maybe there's one when we went to the Winchester.
Yeah, there's one.
And if you don't like the whole monthly donation setup, you can also do one-time donations if you go on over to Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/Scaryish Podcast. All your donations go to upgrading our studio setup and kind of making more merch and more offerings for everyone and kind of keep us going, give us more time to do stuff. It's great.
In the grand scheme of me putting Easter eggs at the end of the episode to see who actually listens this far, I will let you folks know that we hit our donation goal for the month of February over there on our stream, and that means I will be shaving down to a monkey tail beard so that I can look like an asshole for Storytime number 158, I think it's going to be, next week. So look forward to seeing you with ridiculous facial hair and seeing Robin cringe the entire time. And we'll probably post to our social medias as well as I shave down and go through the process of turning my facial hair into what looks like a tail that wraps around my mouth. So thank you to everyone who donated to that as well. And yeah, that has been Pastatime number 1. So Robin, go ahead and sign us out.
You know what makes this really funny is we say, keep on creeping on because pasta, creepy pasta. Keep on creeping on. Get it? That's a thing.
Bye.